what the Church of Scientology is so afraid of.
This is
SPTV.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back for some more SPTV on this fine Friday evening. I am joined today by Christy Gordon and Miriam. Miriam, do you use your last name?
Yeah, Miriam Francis.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome. So we wanted to do this stream tonight to introduce everybody to the Children of Scientology channel. And it also, you guys have this podcast, Children of Scientology Presents the Lighthouse Project. Help me understand, just right from the beginning, the difference between the Lighthouse Project itself and the Children of Scientology YouTube channel. What's the relationship there?
So Children of Scientology has existed for some years with some public facing stuff. You know, we have our private group, and then we realized that we needed to allow people to find us. So we have a website, we have the YouTube channel, we have social media. So people are familiar with that as much as they are, and they can find us. And then as we were inspired by you actually late last year to want to jump into YouTube, we already had this YouTube channel. And so just decided to use it as a project of Children of Scientology. So that's kind of how we're doing it. We might, you know, dial in and create branding and sites and stuff for the Lighthouse Project at some point. The first phase of it is a podcast, but that is not where we want to stop with the Lighthouse Project.
That's cool.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
So when you guys call it a podcast, like sometimes people refer to my channel as a podcast and I go, well, it's not really a podcast. I just do videos. How do you guys do your podcast as a video format, or is it audio only?
Right.
We
so
started-
with the I'll jump in on the Lighthouse Project. So I became involved with the Children of Scientology. Christy and I had been chatting for years since the aftermath, but then it was at the beginning of this year as the Danny Masterson trial was about to kick off, and I really wanted to be more informative on the topics that were brought up throughout the trial, especially with the last trial. They were very restricted on what they were allowed to say, particularly with regards to Scientology. And I felt that we would have some, you know, lived experiences to bring to that conversation. I wasn't ready to do anything on video format, and also the topics were quite sensitive. It was kind of have really conversations that felt kind of private, but that we could record and then, you know, send out so that people could access that information. And so that's why it started off with just audio. So the whole series is just audio covering the Danny Masterson trial, and we have 20 episodes of that.
That's awesome. So when we look at this, if I go to videos, oh boy, let me scroll out a little bit. Are these clips, like if I click through on these, which I don't want to do because it's going to mess up my my screen spacing, are these audio only clips, or or is that what these are?
They're all audio only, but to put them on YouTube, I created video components. So I added, you know, subtitles. I added various different backgrounds so that there's some imagery so that it qualifies as a video. But if you click on that podcast tab there, so you're in videos or whatever. But if you click podcast, then those are just the podcast, because we do other things for Children of Scientology. We do live streams, we do random reels and things that are not necessarily related to the Lighthouse Project.
I see.
So
awesome.
Yeah, so it's kind of a blend. But the podcast so far, we started covering the Danny Masterson trial. That is not where we're headed now. We wanted to cover it in real depth, and so we did 20 episodes alone on Danny Masterson and the Jane Doe's experience, and us comparing and contrasting. But we're headed into something completely different next.
Wow, that's awesome. So it is the two of you and also Victoria Locke. Is there anyone else associated with it that I haven't named?
So we started with Amanda Ray, and then she got a little busy and had to leave us for now. We have had guest hosts Danny Ballou, Serge Delmar, and also Liz Gale so far.
Oh, fantastic. That is awesome. So are you guys going to be doing a lot of more video-based stuff moving forward?
I think we're going to try. we're going to try and do lives because it's so much easier, to be honest.
Mhm.
As you know, production
So
takes
much easier. It's
editing
crazy.
takes forever. Yeah, but
Mhm.
we love our produced episodes, and we get a lot of comments about, oh my God, this is like NPR style. You know, it's gives you a lot more control, more, you know, a little more professional. But I think if you do lives, you just get better at it, and then you end up with the same result ultimately. So that's our goal. Try
That's
and
awesome.
get better.
It's true. I mean, originally I just started doing lives just to save time doing editing because I'm also an obsessive tinkerer. Like, I will edit something and then I'll watch it again. And
Mhm.
I will literally spend 10 minutes shaving off 3 seconds. And it occurred to me, this is a really bad use of time.
Yeah, that's definitely been
Yeah.
our experience. And also just we also need to have our personal lives as well. So yeah, you know, juggled amongst full-time jobs and children and, you know, life and everything like that. So it's doing a live is a great way to just really capitalize on your spare time and make the most of it. So that's where we are heading moving forwards. And also because after 20 recorded episodes, just audio, we're a lot more comfortable with what we're doing and how we're talking about things. So also, you know, so a lot of these topics we hadn't, you know, gone into a lot of conversation, a lot of detail. You know, we had experienced therapy, for example, but a lot of the times you're just trying to educate your therapist on what the situation was that you grew up in. So these conversations are just sort of straight to the nail, you know, just like straight to the root of the thing. And, you know, just sort of really digging up all the details of like relating experiences back to what the testimony is and that sort of thing. So it goes into a lot of depth. And then we've achieved a bit of a comfort level since then.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who may recognize Christy and Miriam, both Christy and Miriam and myself were all in the Scientology and the Aftermath television program. Christy, which of the 3 seasons were you in?
Season 2, episode 8 or 7, depending on what channel you find it on.
I know, right? And
With
Miriam,
Mimi Faust, yeah.
which one were you in? You and Sina did one together, right?
That was season 2, episode 1.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. By the way, I know Sina, you know, lives the van life. Has she expressed any interest in doing any of this as well?
No.
No. Yeah.
No.
I know. For some people, talking about it is therapeutic. For some people, talking about it is traumatic. I'm not speaking for her, but I have to imagine that not everyone falls into the same bucket on that one.
It's been kind of both, you know. You're digging up stuff and you're comparing and contrasting, to other people's things. So it really can be triggering. However, we're kind of processing together, which is really also great. So
yeah.
And then there's a little hangover from all the stuff that we've been digging into with the Jane Doe's experience and stuff, comparing it to our own experiences. So it's, you know, I think it's not for the weak. I think there's some effort and some emotions and psychological aspect attached to processing your trauma publicly.
It is. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, it's probably really one of the reasons I don't spend hardly any of my time on my channel talking about my own story.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. Same.
It's not fun.
I know.
When I shot the Scientology and the Aftermath show, I'm sure you guys had the same experience. It was like a 2-day process. And welcome back, Miriam.
Thank you.
It's a 2-day process, and at the end of it, I wasn't like, oh, geez, I'm so glad that I did that. I was like, I'll never fucking do that again.
Totally. As a matter of fact, when they said, now go answer the door, Mike and Leah are going to ring the doorbell, I was like, no, I'm not going. I'm not going. And they were like, you have to. I was like, oh, I don't want to. I think I don't want to do this. I think just fly me home. I had nerves until the very last second.
Yeah, for me, so I had come in from Australia and was in LA to do our shooting. Again, was 2 days, as you said. But we had friends that were from the ranch that we'd grown up with that wanted to come and see us and hang out like after we'd filmed. And I was like, no, I can't. I just can't. I don't have anything left in me. I don't want to be like, I don't want to be joyful. I just was like exhausted, just absolutely exhausted. Yeah. I don't want to like this isn't like, it wasn't funsies for me, you know what I mean? Like none of
Mm-mm.
it was really fun.
Mm-mm.
But it served a purpose, and I liked the platform. I'd seen the first season, and it was the only thing that was like that at that time that was, you know, that was available, to show photos and tell a story, a structured story in a way that made sense, that was visually impactful, and emotionally impactful. So that was the draw card for me, and that's what interested me in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Miriam, my audience is gonna laugh at me for this, but can you tap your microphone real quick? It's on. That baby's on.
Yeah. Do you want me to turn it up?
But try pulling. Can it come closer to your face?
It doesn't extend. It doesn't extend out,
Okay.
but I will lean for
I can
it.
just hear you just
I can
fine.
turn it up.
Dude, that's going to be your next t-shirt. It's going to be, can you bring your microphone closer to your face? Yeah.
People are like,
so
oh,
what was the problem? What was the problem? You couldn't hear me?
You sound like you're in the middle of a tin can, which is weird because if you have a microphone in front of you, it should sound pretty crisp.
No, I am literally, I am in the middle of a tin can, so that's normal. That is nothing. Yeah. That's what I'm dealing with right now. No, I'm joking. But
she's like,
I had a feeling you were going to pick me up on that.
She's like, I'm in the back of a shipping container.
Hey, they do that in Australia. I saw a movie once. Don't they?
Yeah, we live in shipping containers. Yeah, some of us.
People do.
That is not where I currently live. I live in a real house, I promise. But it's a big room, and there's floorboards, and the sound's just gonna be bouncing around. And yeah.
I actually one of the YouTube holes I go down late at night is channels of refurbishing shipping containers into like really nice houses and stuff. It's funny.
We have one down the street that's a bar. It's very cool. They just cut
awesome.
like a portion of it out and put a top on it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone is asking, this isn't streaming on Children of Scientology, and the answer would be yes, it is. Let me just double. Yeah, it's totally streaming on Children of Scientology.
Well, just tell people it's not where I set it up, and so it's probably streaming somewhere else. So that one that I so thoughtfully set up is not the one that's streaming.
That's
so
right. We had to set up
confusing.
a different stream, but it doesn't look like you canceled the first one though.
No, because I never could because I was too busy setting this one up.
Okay.
So people are in that one waiting.
Oh no, are they waiting? Oh my god.
Can I open a window and get over there? Are you gonna let me? If I lag, you can just kick me out.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, go ahead. Or just tell, oh yeah, because they can't hear us, so they don't know that it's not gonna start.
They're waiting there. Just by the way,
Christy, I have an idea. Take a link to this stream and put it in the comments of that other stream is something that you could do. You know, I can actually do that for you, to be honest. Go ahead, Miriam. What were you saying?
I was going to say, this is what you can expect from us over at Children of Scientology.
Do that for you, to be honest.
This is all very new to us, so we are figuring things out. So if you want any more awkwardness, just come over to our channel.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
I'm going to post.
We don't know.
Awkwardness? Come on over. That's awesome. Actually,
use this link.
You guys talk to yourselves, for God's sakes.
We are live.
Just ignore me.
It's okay. I just did it. Well, do whatever you want. It's fine. Okay, so let's see. Oh, the other thing about that experience, Scientology likes to say that whole thing was like scripted and everything. I had never met or spoken to Leah Remini until she walked in my front door with a freaking camera behind her, like shooting. Like it wasn't like like nothing. I mean,
yeah.
I guess producers do talk. Yes, Christy?
In fact, you know how they had, you know how there's 2 days? The first day was with them. The second day was with production. Was that the same for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. So people were asking if they could meet her first because they wanted to get comfortable and she wanted it to be authentic. She wanted their reaction to be their conversation and not scripted at all. Just FYI.
Yeah. Right. And also, obviously, you know, a producer does talk to you months before to hear your story so they even know whether they're going to shoot with you or
Yes.
not, right? But it's not like you received any notes back, like, you know. Anyway, it's just Scientology propaganda.
You didn't receive any feedback or like, so I had met with Leah the day before, and I think that was more so, I think they wanted to meet with Sina. I think Sina was wanting to have that chat first. So I don't even really recall what we talked about, apart from there was a mention of, whether I was comfortable with reporting to the LAPD. And I said, yeah, of course, because I had done my police report in 2012. And I was waiting to hear back from the US because Australian police had sent it to US authorities. And so I was just waiting and following up and waiting. And so when she said, oh, well, how do you feel about doing a police report with LAPD? And I was like, oh, well, might as well. I'm here. I might as well do it. So that was really cool. And my case continues with LAPD, and they are actively working on that. So justice moves very, very slowly, but justice is coming. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I ask, was Julian Schwartz, do you remember, was he personally involved in your thing?
No.
Okay.
No, mine was RTC, OSA, Golden Air Productions, management, all managed there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Does he get involved in non-celebrity stuff? Because she was full up Sea Org cadet, Sea Org, So I'm not sure I've heard of him.
If it's all Sea Org members and it doesn't involve any public, then it's not going to be Julian's deal.
Not for Julian Schwartz. No. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I first started this channel, which I always forget if it was 7 years ago or 9 years ago, but it was something like that. I remember that part of the idea was just that it just, at the time, I couldn't think of stories that focused on the fact that, or that highlighted the fact that the experience of people who were born and raised in Scientology, you get a much different story from those people than you do from people who joined Scientology. Because to an extent, people who were born and raised in it never decided to be Scientologists. It was just something they were conditioned to think is the right way to be. Honestly, kind of like almost any religion, the majority of Christians are people who were born into Christian families, and that's why they believe that way. The majority of Muslims are people who are born into Muslim families. That's why they believe that way. I know that's not true for everybody, but for the majority of any religious belief system, it's because the child was brought up in a family and said, this is the right way to believe. And it's such a different experience. And it's sort of funny to me. I don't even know where I'm going with this exactly, but it's funny to me how defensive our parents can be at the idea that our involvement was anything less than 100% self-determined.
Right. So the assumption is that you were probably a Sea Org member. So I'll make the distinction. There's growing up as a Scientology kid, and then there's growing up as a Sea Org kid, and there are some big differences there. Growing up as a child of Sea Org parents, your life was already committed to the Sea Org from the day that you drew your first breath. There's no question of that. There's also these ideas cast on you that you were probably a Sea Org member in a previous life. And in fact, after I had joined the Sea Org, I was told, they were like, welcome back, And I was 13 when I joined the Sea Org. And so there is this, kind of mythology. And children are in some ways, these special creatures, but in other ways, as in they're already assumed they have OT powers, already assumed that they're Sea Org members, already assumed that they're here, they're on board, they're on the same terms as the rest of us, right? So, and so it's this really extreme situation that you have no choice. Really, essentially, it's human trafficking, and we're trafficked for labor, and we're groomed and we're raised for that purpose. And then the Scientology child experience is different, and I think Christy can speak more to that because Christy was sort of in and out in this kind of washing machine kind of cycle, which is also very destructive. So the final point I was going to make is that the difference is do you have a home to go to? So do you have a home to go to? So Scientologists who join the Sea Org, it didn't work out, don't like it, just going to go back to mom and dad's. but that's not always the case. And then that depends on your Scientology status. You know, are you, do your parents accept you back? Like, so your kids don't have a home to go to and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of variations there.
Yeah.
I feel like as we were kind of gathering together, our second gen community, and we started getting involved in the critic realm, in these groups and connecting up and stuff, the immediate reaction was this weird disparity between a first gen and a second gen's experience, and how they processed and how we needed to process. And so very quickly, the majority of second gens pulled out of these blended groups because they were so triggering for them, because there's people either still practicing in them, not accountable in them, that explain away or rationalize or even just use Scientology on you when you try to say, this was not okay and it hurt me. And they go, oh, that was then, this is now. Or, you know, just ridiculous stuff. Or just get your TRs in if you just confront it, like still actually running Scientology on a kid that left and is trying to process that childhood trauma. But yes, you didn't choose it. It's a totally different thing. Miriam, you tried to leave at a certain point. You didn't try to leave. You kept joining. I mean, you did eventually, right? But you joined staff at the org. Then you joined the Sea Org, Aaron, right? And it wasn't until way later. So you were semi-willing, not knowing that you really had other options in life, because you're raised to believe that this is the only thing that you should be doing, right? It's the only thing that's going to save mankind.
So we joined staff when we were like 12, and was on staff full-time until I actually left staff when I was 17. My contract wasn't finished. I had a 5-year contract. I'd done 3 years on the staff contract in addition to the 3 years of training. And I got to a point where I was like, this is fucking miserable. I'm not doing this anymore. Like, everyone here's at war with each other. Everyone here is always fault finding. Everyone here is backstabbing. Everyone here is out for themselves. And when I mean left staff, that was leaving staff, not leaving Scientology. I was still like, I'm a gung ho. These people aren't as down with David Miscavige as I am, so I'm not going to waste my time here. I'm just going to leave. And me and my brother moved to LA. Lived in Hollywood for a couple of years. So, but we both had these massive $100,000 freeloader debts. So even though I still consider myself a Scientologist, for those 2 years, we had nothing to do with Scientology or any Scientologists.
Wow.
And the reason I went back to Philly to finish my contract was because in my mind, I still thought continuing to be a Scientologist was the obvious thing I would need to do just for my own well-being. And I knew I would never be able to pay off that freeloader debt. And I was like, all right, I'll go back to LA. I'll go back to Philly, finish my last 2 years on the contract, and then I'll move back to LA, just, you know, live the life of a public Scientologist. And that plan was going fine until at the end of my 2 years, an old friend of mine, Alicia Collins, who had grown up in Philly and had joined the Sea Org and become LRH Com International. She came back to Philly for her mom's wedding. They were like, her sister Heather had just been posted as one of the recruiters at Asho Day. And they're like, oh, do you want to join the Sea Org? And I didn't, but I was like, but remember when you did? And I was like, yeah, I remember when I did. And remember how badly you wanted to do that? I was like, yeah, I remember how badly I wanted to do that. And I convinced myself that those original desires were my true desires, and they had been blunted, and I was going to not miss this opportunity. And I totally screwed myself. But they had, because also I was like, there's no way they're going to get me replaced. Sea Org recruiters have been trying to get me replaced for years and years and years. That's impossible. These guys had me replaced in LA in like a week.
Wow.
So in that sense, I did leave staff, but not Scientology. And then later I left the Sea Org, but not Scientology. And I'll tell you though, where my experience is different and easier than what a kid who was born in the Sea Org and didn't have a home to go to. Even when I was in Philly, I was self-sufficient, really. My mom was still in Clearwater. I mean, I went back to Philly when I was 15. I wasn't even living with my mom. I was living with one of my mom's friends. And I knew I could go off and do whatever I want if I wanted, as evidenced by the fact that I moved to LA by myself when I was 17 years old. And then the whole time I was in the Sea Org, I knew I could leave whenever I wanted. And I still had a house in Philly that I owned the whole time I was in the Sea Org. The whole time I was there, I was able to be there with this viewpoint of like, I was like, guys, you don't get it. I'm actually here because I want to be. And I don't need
That's the
to
difference.
Be. It's a huge difference.
That's the difference.
Huge
that is
difference.
absolutely the difference.
Yeah.
What's interesting, Aaron, is that you sort of arrived just after I left. You arrived at Ash O'Day just after I left to St. Hill in the UK when I was in the Sea Org. So I was in Ash O'Day. So if I hadn't been on the decks and left, what I'm trying to say is that you and I were complete polar opposites at that particular time, because I was just like, I don't want to be here. Like, get me out. I'd been trying to leave for 2 years. I'd like escaped. I'd been brought back by LAPD. Like, it was just,
Really?
Yeah, twice I got brought back by LAPD. Yeah, one time they had to take me to a temporary foster home, and I stayed there overnight. And you know who got me back the next day at 2:00 in the afternoon was do you remember the FBO at Ash O'Day? Short, dark hair,
a guy or a girl?
Woman. Yeah, and like sort of hair up to here, just like straight.
I would not be able to remember her name, but I think I know. Yes.
Yeah. So she was the one that like 2:00 she showed up at this foster home and had to pick me up. And so that morning, as soon as I woke up that morning, I was like, oh my God, there's a TV. So I turned the TV on and I just laid in bed and watched TV until I was like, at any moment they're going to show up and they're going to take me back. So I watched Judge Judy for like 6 hours. Like,
how old were you?
I was 16 at that time.
Look, she ran away and they basically arrested her and handcuffed her.
Yeah, they handcuffed me.
And interrogated her.
Interrogated me, yeah. Because Aaron, this is the thing. My mother was at Gold, which is a confidential location. I didn't have the address of where she was. So when they first picked me up, they picked me up at a 7-Eleven because I'd gone in to get snacks because it was like 1:00 or 2:00 I think it was like 1:00 in the morning by this stage. And it's a crazy story.
She's a criminal breaking curfew.
I was cold and I was hungry and I had nowhere to go. And I thought I'll pop into a 7-Eleven because they were open late and I'll grab a couple snacks, keep me going. Anyways, this woman walked in and straight away she spotted me and she was like, there's a child in here, call the police. So I was like totally freaked out. I don't know what to do. Where do I go? Do I run? And the cashier called the police. They showed up within a couple minutes because they're only like a few minutes from the police station in so where I was near Universal City Walk. That's where I was. So anyways, the 2 police cars, screaming, sirens, the whole works. Like, it was a full show and I was like terrified. So this woman she was questioning me and my instinct was to protect Scientology. I'll make up a story. So I start making up this story. And then she was like, that's bullshit. She just starts screaming at me, and not like I had been screamed at by Sea Org staff members and I didn't care. I would stand there with a smile on my face and just be like, F you. But when a pretty large policewoman is just bearing down on you, it was terrifying. So I start bawling my eyes out, like crying. I'm like, I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. And so she's like, right, let's have it. So I'm like, okay. So I start explaining the truth, and it's so bonkers that they've had it. They throw me into this police car, take me to the police station. The policemen in there are like, they come in. They're already in like the central area that I'm taken into. Like, there's desks and stuff, and they're just like throwing jaunts at me, like joking, like they were teasing me. I'm not even kidding you. It was a horrible experience. They were like, I think they were trying to intimidate me because they thought I was a runaway. But they were making fun of me and stuff. And then I'm put into, it's awful. And then I'm put into a holding room, and it just has a bench seat. So I'm sat on the bench. Oh, by the way, they handcuffed me in the station. So I arrive in the station when they're kind of like laughing at me and stuff like that. That's when they handcuffed me. Then they put me into this room, sit me down on this bench, and then they're in and out interrogating me, asking the same questions over and over. Where's your mother? And I'm like, I don't know. She's at a confidential location. And my father had already been sent to the UK in the gold rep office. So he wasn't, in the country, and I didn't have a legal guardian. And they had called ASHO and asked for me, because ASHO was the phone number that I had. And they had overnight at reception was this new guy named, I think his name was Miguel or something. Anyways, he didn't speak much English because they were recruiting a lot of Hispanic people at that time. And he was like, oh, there's no Miriam here and no one lives in this building. And I'm like, no. Because of course no one lives in the ASHO building. They live next door. Anyway, so what I'm saying is like all my answers were just like, they were like, this is crazy.
You got to tell me that so when you're in the 7-Eleven and she's like, no, tell me the real story. And you're like, okay, fine. I'll tell you the truth. What did the truth sound like?
Like crazy business. So I was like, look, the truth is that I live and work at the Church of Scientology. And that my mother, both my parents are in Scientology. So she's like, well, so then where's your mother? Because that's the first thing they want to know. They just want to place you back at your home. So where do you live? And I was like, well, I don't know where she lives. I don't know where my mother lives. But I live here at this building and it's called ASHO and here's the phone number. And that's when she made that phone call. And I think that's when things escalated again. Yeah.
Did you want them to take you back, or did you just have no choice but to give them the only phone number that you knew?
I just wanted it to be over. I was like, this is terrifying. And for me in that moment, Scientology felt like the safer option. Like, take me back. Yeah, I was like, take me back there. Like, this is where I live. This is the phone number. Okay, we'll verify that. No, they say no one lives in that building. And I was like, oh no. It's just that they happened to speak to the wrong person. Anyone else would have known my name, but he was a new recruit. So
Miguel's like, Miriam, no lo sé.
Exactly. He's like, no. Oh man.
So did they think at that point that you were just lying about where you lived, or did they realize they were just not going to be able to connect these dots?
Both. I think both. Yeah. Because the thing is, their goal is to place me somewhere and then their job's done. Like, okay, so we take her back to her home where there's a parent or legal guardian, that job over. But this job kept continuing, and I think they were trying to like break me down. Like, we're going to get some more solid information out of her if we kind of terrorize her a bit. So I spent 4 hours in handcuffs at the police station before they finally gave up and took me to this foster home.
Miriam, what year was that? I'm curious because I'm just trying to compare it to what they would do. Like, now they know about trafficking, and hopefully they know about
2001. Yeah, it was 2001.
Wow.
Right. So then, Aaron, you arrive. When do you arrive?
August 2002.
Yeah. Okay. So next year. All right. So by 2002, I've already gone to the UK, and I'm actually out of the Sea Org by that time. But yeah, interesting. I was just thinking, like, we would have been complete polar opposites. Like, you come in, you're like, I want to be here. I'm excited. Let's get the tech in. And I would have been like, yeah, I would have given you a hard time.
That's why I was such a prolific report writer, because I'm like, we need to get shit right.
And the thing is, I had been on the TTC, so like, had you come a couple years earlier, yeah, we definitely would have come up against each other, and
so, but Miriam, I get there, and the Mickey Sarkoviches of the world are there. Yes. It's like, no one could epitomize someone who did not want to be there more than Mickey Sarkovich.
Right. Yeah.
Who else were some of like your generation of those Sea Org kids who were like, we don't give a shit? Jenny Burpee was one of them.
Yeah, she was not a rancher. Like, she wasn't a Sea Org kid. She was a Scientology kid. Yeah. Yeah. And the time when I was there, she was pretty gung-ho. She was in AOLA, and she was sort of like, yeah, very like, I'm on purpose. But and
I didn't realize she was Sea Org.
She was in the Sea Org, yes, for a number of years. So there was kind of like a division of like, yes, there was rancher kids that came down, or Sea Org kids, or cadets, however you want to say it. There was some people that didn't want to be there, but most really did conform. And I did try when I first started in the Sea Org. I was like, I'm going to be like, you know, I was training to be an auditor and I was like, yeah, this is it. I have no idea what an auditor is. Like, I mean, I knew what the definition was and I'd experienced a couple of sessions, but I didn't really, like when I was in the van going from the ranch, it was at nighttime, going from the ranch to LA to start on the EPF. I was like, oh, I don't really know if I'm going to like being an auditor because I don't really know what that is. But
had you not had auditing, Miriam, by then?
I'd had a few sessions and I'd had those sessions. I was like 7 or 8 years old. And by this time I'm 13. And they were like on grade 0 quads, like, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be trained to use the e-meter. And I don't really understand a whole lot about it. But anyways, that's sort of, yeah.
So like when I think of the FBO showing up to pick you up from a freaking foster house and you're not an escaped cadet, like you're an actual Sea Org member, right?
Yes. I was a Sea Org member. Yes.
I could only imagine how much shit you were in. What happened after she came to get you?
I think they had to be kind of calm with me, and I was ecstatic. I was so excited because I was like, yes, I finally get to leave. I had already told them previously that I wanted to leave. I was at that time I was the editor of the Auditor magazine, and then when I said I wanted to leave, I got an argument with, remember the DSEMSEC, Div 2 Sec.
So I mean, when I was there, it was Ruthie Disher.
No, her husband.
Paul Disher was the DSEMSEC at that time?
I'm pretty sure he was the Div 2 Sec. And because okay. I was the, or maybe he was a department head, but he was definitely a senior within the Division 2, which is dissemination, because I was the editor of the Auditor magazine and I was in promotions or marketing or whatever. So
did you work with Janet Burtno?
I certainly did. This is a funny story. Okay. Janet Burtno was my senior. So after they've dissolved the TTC, also I sucked at the TTC, like I was not good at it. But anyways, so I couldn't get trained. Anyways, that failed. So they put me onto a post. At the time, the ASHOs were going St. Hill size. So it was like the demand was like, get people out of the TTC, fill those posts, right, to meet these quotas. So they placed me under Janet Burtno, and she was my department head. And but what had happened is she had a spider bite. So she was not on post. She was laid up in her room at the complex with like a massive swollen leg and this massive lump and purple and all kinds of things going on. And it was the supercargo had said, I think that's the position. Anyways, he was like,
Russell Fisher? Look, Russell Fisher at that time?
Russell Fisher. Yeah, Russell Fisher. And he was like, look, so you're going to start this post. It's the editor of the Auditor magazine. And what you're going to do is you're going to send all these photos up to Gold. And it was all very crazy. And Janet's your senior, but she's got a spider bite. And anyways, eventually I had to go in there because I was supposed to like organize photo shoots. Like at that time I was 15 and I had minimal education. Like all I'd been taught is how to read and write and do some basic math. And I was, now supposed to run a photo shoot and crazy stuff. So I'm in there in her room and I'm just like trying not to look at her leg because it's like really molten and like swollen and purple. And she's writing me out storyboards for because she's like, do a storyboard. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And then she's showing me how to do that. And it was like just really thrown into the deep end. And it was pretty crazy.
What was this, like a brown recluse spider or something in the basement of ASHO? Wasn't her office in the basement of ASHO?
It was. We were in the basement of ASHO.
They put or allowed wolf spiders at the QI because they ate the palmetto bugs. So they would bite us at night when we were cadets, and we'd wake up with these huge welts, and we would report it to whoever, cadet IC, security, and they would tell us that we just needed to avoid them because they kept the roach population down. Just FYI, I have to throw that in.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Well, Janet was always laid up in bed with something swollen because she was one of the most out of control, off the rails Sea Org members ever. She used to be the captain.
Was hilarious.
Miriam, my understanding is that she used to be the captain AOLA when the 1993 IAS event occurred for that. And the budget for that event went so insane because of who? Of course, because of David Miscavige. But the budget went so out of control that Miscavige removed all the captains from their posts just for that reason.
Oh,
So
wow.
much money was spent on that event. So Janet Burtner was one of these people who used to be like a big shot, used to be
I
able
can
to,
see that.
and then she
Mhm.
was like stuck in the basement editing
Mhm.
auditor mag photos. So she didn't give a shit about anyone or anything. She was so nasty to everyone. What was your experience with her? Was she nice to you?
I thought she was hilarious. I thought the whole thing was completely insane. And what had happened is the supercargo. So he's like, right, this is where your office is. Come down to the basement. And I'm like, oh. And so like I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So he's like, this is what we do. And he was like, oh, in a rush. And he was like frantically just he scooped up all these photos and shoved them into an envelope. And he's like, you just send it to Gold, send it to Gold. These are the photos. We're way past our deadline. They're screaming at us. Orders are coming down the line. Like this was literally the first few minutes of me starting my new post. And so I'm like, okay, I just send it to Gold. Okay, sure. So I go and send it to Gold. My name's on it. I haven't even looked at these photos. He's just shoved a whole bunch in there. Meanwhile, my mother is at Gold in the marketing department. This is where we send all the information, all the data and the photos so that they can compile the magazine. Then we get it sent to the printer. And there's a scathing letter that comes back, or however they had sent it, scathing. So it was like a few days later, supercargo is like, he's like, look, Miriam, I got to talk to you about something. And I was like, what? And he was like, Gold is not happy with you. Oh, look, and he's like, and I'm like, what? I was like mortified because it came from the marketing department, which I know my mother's in, and it was like scathing. It was like, how dare you? You are so degraded. How could you dare to send us these horrible photos and like all this stuff? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even, like, it wasn't even me. It was him. And he's like lecturing me about what a shit job I've done. I was like so stunned. So then it was after that we had to get a professional photographer. And then that's where I ended up in Janet Burtner's room where she's trying to tell me how to do it. So anyways, that was quite a ride. But what had happened is I was on that post and I ended up doing a whole bunch of like miscellaneous things because the Gold shoot crew was there shooting for the orgs going St. Hill Size to be put in a major event. So I was working with them around the clock, helping set up their shoots and just like all kinds of things. So I was up really late often, a lot of times, and I just got really sick of it. So I got in this argument with Paul Disher. And anyway, so he was like, if you don't want to be here, just leave. And I was like, okay. And he was like, what? What did you say? And he was just so pissed off. And he was just like, he called Jennifer Bubke down in ethics, and he was like, get this SP off my lines. And yeah. So I was like hopeful. I was like, oh, I'm gonna leave. Yeah, this is so good. But they just busted me to a cleaner and kept me in the org for months and months. And I was like, so that's why I escaped in the night. That's that story.
Wow.
Miriam, is that name Jennifer whatever Bubke, the one that Lewis was referring to the other day that was on mission, doing an ethics mission at PAC?
Yes,
the name?
because Jennifer,
Lewis?
correct.
Jennifer Bubke.
Jennifer and Lewis were married at that time. They were both ASHO MAAs. He was the public MAA and she was the staff MAA.
And she worked with Julian Schwartz.
Or it might have been the other way around. I mean, by the time I got to ASHO, Lewis might have been a staff MAA. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No, I think he was public the whole time.
Okay.
Public MAA the whole time. Yeah.
That's weird because I remember getting an ethics interview from him.
That's hilarious. Oh, well, maybe he worked with staff and public. Oh, we should.
I feel like he was.
It's totally possible. It's totally possible.
Yeah.
I just heard him say today that he was not only a course soup for SHBC, but he also was a case supervisor. I didn't realize that.
Later he did his class 6 training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul Disher was one of the most unpleasant Sea Org members I have ever known. He ended up being the DCO by the time I was there. He was the DCO. And so he ran all the income lines and he ran the tech calling office, and the tech calling unit was under me as the tech sec, but I couldn't go in there because Paul would run it directly. And I'm like, thank God, because I don't want anything to do with that mess. But do you remember Phyllis Houlihan? Was she there when you were there, Miriam?
Yes.
You know, Paul and Phyllis ended up getting married after Ruthie died.
Really?
And they left the Sea Org and they live in Philly.
No way.
Yes.
Wow. Well, good on Paul Disher. Yeah, it's good
Kinda.
to see them. He was there for many, many, many years. Do you know what? There is someone that we need to chat about. Okay. This is his name Andy? He's Asho Foundation.
He was the DCO Asho Foundation.
Yeah, that's why when you said DCO, that reminded me of that. Okay. Andy, right? And so he did a video of you.
Yes.
He did a video. This is what I want to talk about. He did a video of you, and he was like, Aaron was just a mean person. What a mean, yelling person
one
he
of
was.
those.
Okay. Well, when I was in Asho Foundation, because I next go to Asho Foundation, I'm in the tech call-in office, and it was just filled with a bunch of rancher kids that had just been put in there. And he would come in and he would just yell and scream. And Brendan Bryan, who was a kid there, he would grab him by the neck and just throw him up against the wall and just scream in his face. Dead set. I saw that happen at least a couple of times. And I'm at my desk like, I'm pretending to do work, like on the computer, like fiddling with the database, because I'm like, don't look, like just pretend to be productive so you don't get yelled at. But he would do it on a regular basis, just come in and just scream. Yeah.
Is it a term not in Scientology, a face ripping? Like in the Sea Org, we called it a face ripping, but I don't know if that's a non-Scientology term. Do we know? Is that a non-Scientology?
I don't know, but that's such an accurate.
Ripped his face off, a face ripping, or they would call it an SRA, which is a severe reality adjustment.
Yeah,
the thing
that's
about
what it was. Yeah.
So many of those videos that they put on my website are from Asho F people who I didn't even work with. That's like Ben Francis. By the way, Ben Francis can't be your
brother.
brother.
That's my brother. Oh yeah. I was going to mention that next.
He does a whole video about me. I'm like, I probably spoke to this dude 5 times in 4 years. I never even worked with him. Why are so many people from the other org doing videos about how horrible I was? They barely had any people from my org.
Right, but Ben would have known you. Let me see if I get this right. Ben would have known you at Flag during training, would he not? Or no, because you would have been separate, or not in that time period.
He was on the first Golden Age of Tech Evolution?
No, not the first Golden Age of Tech Evolution. He was sent there with was it New World Corps?
Yeah, anyways. I would not have known Ben from anywhere other than Asho.
Okay, so Asho Day is where you would have had interactions.
Yeah.
Look, I can't speak to that. I wasn't there then, so but I love my brother endlessly, and if he ever gets out, call me.
He has like completely red hair, right? Do you guys have? Are you guys half siblings?
He has orange hair. No, we are full. We're full siblings. Yeah,
I can't tell.
Same parents.
But you don't have red hair.
I don't.
You don't have red hair.
No, I don't have red hair.
Okay.
And Sam Francis, my brother, he was on Laura's channel. Sam and I look quite similar, but no.
A lot. You look like siblings for sure.
We do, yeah. And unfortunately with Ben.
All 3 of you are 100% full siblings.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and unfortunately with Ben, like, see, so I hadn't seen him in a number of years, obviously, and I came back visiting from Australia, and I was so shocked at how skinny he was. Like, it broke my heart. And I said, like, I was like, Ben, what? Like, yeah. So, yeah.
You were just really talking to Lewis the other night about being so malnourished and so underweight, and that's just what happens to you in the Sea Org. You've got so much stress and so much pressure on you, and there's no care for your
growing up. Ben was always so athletic. He was so skilled at everything. Like, he could ride a skateboard. He was so good at rollerblading. He could do all the tricks. He could slide rail, whatever, jump, twist, turn. Like, he was when he was in the Sea Org, he had gone snowboarding when he could get libs, he would go snowboarding. He just was very fit, naturally athletic, and active, and just loved it. It was just part of who he was. And then that was the Ben that I knew when I left. And when I came back, that wasn't like he wasn't the same. And I put my arm around like his upper arm here, and I could wrap my whole hand around his upper arm. And like, anyways, I was saying to him, I was like, Ben, what's happened? And he was like, yeah, I'm just drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes. And I just like, that was around the time of the basics, the whole basics drive. And he was so under pressure. It was so insane. Like anyways, it was a crazy, crazy time. And I was trying to get to see him, and they wouldn't let him go. They wouldn't release him. They said I would have to buy the basics, which was like 3,000 Australian dollars. He would have to sell me the basics so that he could be released for a libs day.
Wow.
And that was on his CSW. That was written on his CSW. And anyways, in the end, I got like 2 hours with him of an evening. But every day we would go there and we would like bring lunch just so we could spend a half hour during his lunch break. And then in the end, they with him and his wife Rady, they let him out for a couple hours. And yeah, we went and
he
played
married
pool
Rady
and
to
stuff.
Polly?
Yeah.
Wow. So when was that, when you said the basic stuff, was that 2007, 2008-ish?
Right. So by this time it was 2008. So it had come out in 2007, but the time period when I was getting hammered with phone calls and stuff like that was 2008. And 2008 was the first time I went back to the US after being out in Australia since 2002. So actually I'd left the US 2001, went to the UK first. But anyways, and I did 2 trips. I went 2008 and I went 2009. I went back there. So yeah, it was during that time period.
Wow. So you
By the way, the added, Aaron, one extra layer. When I'm trying to get time off for Ben, the first time we went, 2008, was really difficult. The second time we went, 2009, was equally difficult. But our half-brother had passed away, and I was trying to get them to release Ben so that we could go and have a memorial service. And my mom's like, oh, don't worry, Miri, if he doesn't get time off, he does. I'm like, Mom, this is insane. Our sibling has died. Like, your son has died. We're supposed to be able to be together. That's why I've flown across the sea, so I can be with you all, so that we can do something together. And it was the same situation of not letting him go. And again, I think we just got a few hours, and that was it.
Wow.
It's insane.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus. Well, they wouldn't give Aaron time off for his brother's funeral, right?
Well, they didn't want to. They ended up having to. And I ended up being able to go without having anyone go with me. And that's the thing. It was like, people are so paranoid in this year about whether people are going to escape. And you're like, don't you realize that if that's your primary concern, these people don't want to be here? You're not concerned with the fact that they don't want to be here. You're concerned with the fact that if you let them go, they'll never come back. But you don't want to do anything about the fact that they don't want to be here. And I would always have to remind them, like, you guys are shitting me. I could leave anytime I I'm here because I want to be here. I said, they're like, oh, well, you should take a plane so you can go. I'm like, I don't want to take a plane. I'm taking a train. I'm taking a train from LA to Albuquerque. I want to be with my thoughts. And anyway, they did let me go, but they didn't want to, because again, they never want to let anybody go because they think they're not going to come back.
It's interesting that they constantly want to control the symptom and not the cause of the issue. But also this guy, Aaron Saxton, who is ex-Scientology second generation, he's talking about when he was the MAA or when he was an HCO and people would CSW for time off, they had a strategy to deny it because they didn't want them to go off and get exposed to bad PR. They didn't want them to go off and have a good time and not want to return. So it was totally a strategy. So they would find reasons why they would make the family that they wanted to go have a leave of absence with suppressive or antagonistic, or they actually had a strategy around it. So they could deny leaves, could deny time off with family, could deny it, and make the kids, these kids in the CMO, buy into it. Yes, my family's suppressive. Yes, they're antagonistic. Yes, they're enemies. Yes, like they actually would buy the shit. And it's so disgusting and sick to me when I hear that they did that intentionally.
Absolutely. And the other thing that they would do is they would sec check you before you left and when you returned. That was like the policy or the order or whatever was how it was supposed to go. Now, did they sect check you before and after? Because I was able to get around it when anyways, I'll tell that story in a sec, but were you able to?
I gotta be honest, I don't have a distinct memory about it. I feel like a returning from LOA sec check is something that never actually occurs. It's supposed to, but who's got time for that?
I know, but the thing is, the threat is there. So no one has the resources for that to actually be delivered. Like there's no spare auditor that can just do that at random. But it's the belief that's there. So when you're away, you're like, oh, like I better make sure that I don't,
And I love how if you're trying to take,
I
love if you're trying to take a leave, it's not the people in HCO who are responsible for making sure you get your sec check. It's you. You're supposed to figure it out.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's on you. I'm not sure if, do you remember Katrina Reyes? She goes off to renew her visa. She flies over to Russia or where the hell she went. And she experiences
you can say it. You can say it.
A drug grape, whatever. And she comes back, and I'm not sure if that was discovered because she reported it or if it came up in her, sec check when she returned from leave and tells them this happened to me. And they're like, they went crazy trying to apply ethics to her, of course, how she pulled this in, what she did. And then anyways, it resulted in her leaving ultimately. So that was good. But I feel like it might have been because she was having this, returning from leave sec check, basically. And they wouldn't let her get a medical appointment to be examined by a doctor. And they wouldn't let her report to police. They wouldn't assist her in any way whatsoever. Just saying.
It really
That's
is.
horrible. And also, I believe what I understand of her story, she was told that, it was her out ethics, like that she did the wrong thing and that's why that happened to her. And that's very ingrained. And Christy, also, that's a really good point because we do really, we really dive into that in our podcast. That's just like one example of like understanding the background and the nuances of like, and other instances of that occurring because it was quite prolific and it's based on the belief system. See, in the trial, the Jane Does were permitted to talk about things that were policies and practices that related to their experiences, but they couldn't talk to the beliefs. And that was sort of the extra layer that we could provide to, where do these things come from? Because that's such a firmly held belief that you're at cause and that you're responsible for absolutely everything that happens to you. And what happens is that when these types of incidents occurs, that is the handling. You need to find where you are responsible. And I was made to do that when I was doing my Leaving the Sea Org sec check, and they tailor-made questions to me, asking me how I was responsible for my father sexually abusing me as a child. And that might be shocking to people, but there was literally 4 variations of that same question. And it is shocking. People should be shocked because it's insane that what I experienced. And fortunately for me, that actually didn't mess me up too badly because I was like sitting there like, trying to think. I'm like, well, I was asleep. Like in every single instance, I was asleep. You imagine a child sleeping. We sleep pretty soundly. So I was asleep and I would wake up and he was on top of me. So there wasn't any like interaction that led to a grooming, or there was nothing like that. It was just I woke up. So I think it could really mess up someone in very terrible ways going down that line of questioning, but I was able to reject that pretty quickly and say, well, actually, I can't see anything that I did to cause it. Now and so what they would do then is then go to a previous lifetime. But I was adamant. I was like, and I just started, they pushed back, and then I just started swearing at them and carrying on and basically flipping out and just not accepting what they were trying to do. So, yeah.
That is the thing that they do. If you didn't do it this life, you must have done it in a past lifetime. Like they've already established that exists, and you agree that thing exists. And so we can use that as this weird scapegoat every time you say, I'm a child. I don't have any radiation. I'm a child. I haven't graped anyone. No, I don't deserve this thing. I didn't pull this in. I'm only 5 years old. Like, I mean, it's just insane. And I just totally lost my train of thought. I was going to say something.
And Well, that's what happened to Jane Doe 1 in her experiences too, because she was sec checked for about a period of 3 months, and they were trying to make her see what she did in a previous lifetime to pull this in. And not only that, Jane Doe 1 in particular, there was additional levels of all this crazy gaslighting. I mean, Jane Doe 3 definitely experienced it, and Jane Doe 2 also really experienced it, more so in a previous assault was not done by Danny Masterson. But all three of them were gaslit and all kinds of crazy stuff happened. But Jane Doe 1 was given the condition of confusion to do by Julian Swartz. So you're telling a victim that they are confused. And the step is find out where you are. So you're telling a victim, you don't even know where the F you are. Figure out where you are first before before you start making these wild accusations. It's just complete.
Yeah. You're so
nonsense.
unstable. You're so unstable as a being. You don't even know that you're right here in your body, basically. You can't even trust your perceptions or your memories because you might not even be perceiving this reality.
Well, and then when you get to doubt, it's that you, or even treason, was it that you are actually betraying your group by believing this thing happened to you? Like, I don't know that there could be gaslighting that's any worse than that. You're betraying your group. You go. What?
We haven't heard much about Jane Doe 1's father because he died years before the thing ever came to trial. But he was very much on her side, and he was very much making a stink about how Scientology was handling this thing. And for that, he was ordered to sec checking, where he was asked if he had ever done these things to his daughter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's so gross, Aaron. That's the grossest thing I've ever heard.
And that comes from an L. Ron Hubbard lecture where he is talking about, and actually there's multiple policies, but basically it's the person who protests too loudly, based on the Shakespeare play, and so they have overts of their own, and he talks about, and yes, and even in what he's referring to, it is actually a sexual thing that he's talking about. I'm going to say the actual word. He's talking about raping little boys. So this man is objecting to raping little boys. Oh, I'm all worked up. I don't want anyone to rape little boys. It's like, and so then the line of questioning was, what did you do to little boys in your past life? And this is the same shit. But for a father who is doing what he's supposed to do to protect his daughter, now that's being turned into some sick thing, and that he must have some sick agenda. Well, he's protesting too loudly. He must have overts of his own. This all comes back to L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah. And my understanding is that is about the time that he said, I think I'm done with this.
Oh, did he? Oh, good for him. Good for him. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Wow.
And do you remember the mother's letter also? That was really unusual to see a parent really defending their child. It's not common. My mother fought for me on the RPF because it was the wrong assignment when I was 15. And she fought and fought and fought until she was assigned to the DPF. And then she shut up.
Wow.
But because that's what they'll do. They'll just punish you if you're a squeaky wheel. But to see a mother like fighting with David Miscavige over what's being done to her daughter was so inspiring. I'm so sorry that she didn't follow through once she wanted to report to authorities. That was where she crossed the line. But the fact that she was willing to fight it all, that she was willing to write those letters, meant something to me. You know, a lot of kids don't get that protection from their parent once this parent is corrupted by Scientology, really, you know?
Yeah.
I agree.
mean, especially, in the Sea Org, having a parent fight for you is almost unheard of. I mean, they don't even know what the hell you're doing or even where you are.
Correct.
But so you mentioned, Miriam, that your mom was in promo and marketing, or marketing at Gold. Would most people know your mom?
Oh, yeah. Carrie Francis or Carrie Elliott. Anyone at Gold would know her.
She did those really
Elliott,
famous
oh
paintings
yeah,
of
Miss
LRH.
Christie.
That's why they brought her over. That's why they stole her from Miriam. That's why they human trafficked her from Australia.
So, you went through the L. Ron Hubbard Life exhibition? Have you been through there?
Yes, I mean a long time ago. Oh, the photo of him like as a child with the floating ball and the sticks and shit with the magic.
Those paintings? Yes, with the magic dude. Yeah. So
Oh.
those series of paintings, I think there's like 13 in total. What had happened is she was at the time she was in the Sea Org in Sydney in Australia. But Mike Rinder was putting together the Life exhibition, and he sent out a request, like any, Scientologist artists, and they were required to basically provide a sample, and then one of them would get chosen. So for her, it was like, how amazing, I got chosen out of all these Scientologists all over the world. And so they were like, okay, get over here. Mike Rinder said that he was involved in taking her. It's getting darker and darker there. I'll keep talking. Hopefully you can hear me, Erin.
It's like us. We're already in the dark. He just has a light that comes and goes.
I know.
I can hear you when I get up.
So funny. Because I could tell it was bothering you too. You're like, before. When the first light went out, and you're like, oh God. Anyways.
I love it. Please don't ever fix that light. I just love it. I love the entertainment of it all.
So Mike Rinder was like, yeah, get her over here. So my brothers and I, so I, was probably about 4 years old at the time. Older brother was 5. Younger brother was 1 year old, roughly about that age. They just whipped her away over there, and she was like, oh, I'm so successful. Like, she just thought it was the best thing. She loved it. And she went on to do these series of paintings, which are now in the L. Ron Hubbard Life exhibition. And it took her, their oil paintings takes a long time. So she was there like 1.5 years. Meanwhile, they brought all the marketing people up from LA to Gold. They transferred them to Gold. So by the time we arrive, because basically she calls my dad and is like, gives him an ultimatum, like, it's either it's over or you come here. It's up to you. And I'm not going to help you. Like, he has to go and scramble. He's going to sell all our things, save up for the flight for the 4 of us and all the rest of it. But she was basically like, yeah, you're on your own, or make it go right to come here. So he did. And I was like, okay, great. And actually, I didn't even remember what my mother looked like. So that was my first panic of like, am I going to recognize her? I very much remember thinking that. By this stage, I'm 5. And by the time we fly over, I turn 6. So I'm 5 when our dad's like sorting through all of our things and, selling off my bike. And so all of our possessions are kind of dwindling. And it was a very confusing time. And I was really worried. Like, when I see her at the airport, everyone, well, I won't know who she is. And I don't remember what her face looks like. And that was worrying. So when we get there, I'm like, and we do see her, and, she wraps us up in a big hug, and we're so excited. And then we spend a couple of days with her, but then she drops us off at the CEO, doesn't say goodbye, and leaves. And I don't see her or my dad for the next probably 2 to 3 months, because he's on the EPF. I get dropped off with the clothes I'm wearing. I'm 6 years old, just turned. My older brother is about to turn 7, and my younger brother is 3, about that age. We're all dropped off with the clothes that we're wearing, no other belongings, and we don't see our parents because my dad's on the EPF, and my mom goes back to Gold. And at that time, there was a base-wide shutdown because they were all in lower conditions. It was a base-wide lower conditions. No one was allowed to leave the base. And I was quite confused because there was like hundreds of kids running around. It was so chaotic. It was group showers. And so I remember distinctly my first shower time. It was just, we were all herded in, and then the boys were kind of busting to get in. So as I'm trying to throw my clothes on, the boys are all pouring in, and I was just like so freaked out. Went to sleep on a cot that night. So they just pull out all these canvas cots and lay them along the floor. And I'm just like, I was like, oh, good, I got a cot next to Ben at least. So I'm looking at him as I'm falling asleep, and I'm like starting to feel more reassured because he just off to sleep, And so I'm like, okay, it's going to be okay. And it was a very crazy situation. Yeah.
I cannot imagine being a parent and being okay with that.
I mean, if you listen to Valeska Paris and Melissa Paris's story, same thing happened to them. They were brought to St. Hill. They were sent to the cadet org. Same thing. They had 3 kids with the same age range that you guys are talking about. The mom drops them off, goes off to get a hot chocolate, never comes back again. Like same shit.
Oh yeah, that's the added thing, is that we sat on a bench in the hallway, and our mom, we had seen her go into the office, but we never saw her come out. Like there's an office room at the beginning of like where you come into the CEO, and we were just around the corner in the hallway sitting on a bench because there was no other bench in that other area. So I don't know what happened to Sam. He must have got taken away straight away. But Ben and I are sitting on this bench, and we're like, and time just kept going by, and eventually realized that she must have left. And she didn't say goodbye, and we were getting hungry, and we didn't know where to go because there was no one around. Like in the hallway, there was no one passing through the hallway. So we sat on this bench for probably at least 3 hours. I'm not making this up. Eventually, an adult passed by. By this stage, I think it's like dinner time, because she brought us to a room and there was all these kids just like shoving down spaghetti. And I was like, oh, I'm hungry. Just go straight in and have something to eat. Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
It was wild.
Is Ben your older brother or younger?
Older, and he's less than a year older than me.
Okay. So they call that Irish twins, I believe.
Yeah, and we were really
now the red hair
close.
makes sense.
Yeah, and we were super close growing up. Super close. And we were close even throughout the Sea Org. We would chat on the phone for an hour or two when we could. We would always call each other on our birthdays. Mine's September and his is October, and so we would always call each other. And yeah, now I'm an SP and we're disconnected, and I've made many attempts to contact him, but yeah.
Did you ever see your mom again?
I did, very rarely. And so she was then, so as I was growing up in the cadet org, yeah, she would come and visit from Gold.
She would come down. I didn't know they would. I thought they only got to visit the kids that were at the Int Ranch, but they would come down to LA sometimes.
They would come down on the mail run, which was this van that would go from the HGB to the Gold base, back and forth, and so she would jump on there. But it wasn't often. So once a month, and then that was like once every few months, and then it was once every 6 months, and then sort of on and on. Yeah.
And once you got shipped off to Pack Ranch, as you guys all did, I know that your dad came when he admitted to what he did to you, right? When he was going through eligibilities or whatever. But did your mom ever come to Pack Ranch to visit you?
Ooh, good question. She did a handful of times. Yeah. Yeah. Just only a few times, like not many. Yeah.
And what I want to just mention is that you're talking about sitting in this hallway on a bench with your brother as a very young child and with no food, and your parents never come back. And the thing is, when you are able to convince parents that their children aren't really children, they're just screwed. And I don't, it's it's so the impact of that is so giant and so encompassing. Like I can't even imagine how many things that affects when you convince a parent, number one, their child's not their child. Number two, that relationship is not important. And number three, they're not really a child. They're just an ageless spirit in a young body, but whatever. Like it just echoes and echoes and echoes and echoes.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
If a child abuser wanted to shoot fish in a barrel, all he has to do is become a Scientologist or join the Sea Org. I mean, I guess there's not so much kids in the Sea Org anymore, thank God.
We have a podcast. The name is The Perfect Hunting Ground because of, and we used Danny Masterson and the Jane Does as examples. Like there is no protection. There is no one. You have no voice. You have no rights. You pulled it in. You caused this to happen to you. If you do report it, you're punished. Like that scenario was rampant through the Sea Org for all children, public children, Sea Org children, cadet children, it didn't matter. Like I know we talk a lot about Sea Org kids. Public kids are fucked. They are fucked
Oh,
because
100%.
once their
They're not
parents are corrupt,
supervised, they're-
once their
yep.
parents are corrupted, like, so my sister and I, our initial trouble happened because my mom wasn't home and we were left alone with neighbors. That's where it started, with random neighbors that they didn't know because of the pressure to be on course, because of the pressure to be on staff and get her stats up. So she left us with random men. So that's where our trouble started. Same thing with Sherry Allens. Like, there's plenty of kids that were harmed outside because the parents didn't think they were kids anymore, you know? And that's even before you get into the Sea Org and all of these situations that happen later. Like, there's just so many layers of neglect and abuse and harm that happens to kids when they lose their protection, when they lose the love and the care of the adults that are supposed to be advocating for them, you know, like you did. And Aaron, you too.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, that's what I've grown to understand more. When I was a kid at the HEA, there were these other kids that were just around Pack Base that were like in and out, circle around. Maybe one parent's in the Sea Org, maybe both parents are in the Sea Org, but maybe the child is at some stage said, I don't want to be here. But they're kind of just doing their own thing, or they're in and out of things. And like Serge Obolinski was somebody that was like that. That was just sort of a kid around Pack Base that we knew of. Like, we knew all these kids' names and we interacted with them and we would hang out sometimes. And but we were fortunate. See, that's where the thing is, like, I think that they were less fortunate and that we were more fortunate because we had our friends group. So we had a really tight-knit group, and that companionship and all living in dorms. We didn't have our parents like the same way that they didn't have their parents, but at least we had each other. And I know that, like, Christy, with your experience as well, you were sort of like in and out of things. Like, you had your sister, but you were really like the caretaker a lot of times too. So you had this added responsibility. And it's a really rough situation because you really don't have anyone that is being responsible for you and looking after you and caring for you.
Totally. And I agree with you that my time in the cadet org, I felt like I was a part of something, at least, even if we were still being, you know, neglected and in just horrible circumstances and surrounded by adults that were screaming at you at all times, no matter what you did. Like, that was bad enough. But when you were public kids and you were left home alone, you got into different trouble that was also really awful. So I just have such, I have both experiences, that I understand that Scientology kids are put through different paces than Sea Org kids are put through. But I did love the camaraderie of the cadet experience. There were downsides to it, obviously, but it did feel like you had a little crew, you had a little tribe, you know, and that felt good, at least. And so that's what me personally led me to tracking down so many kids that I came up with that I wanted to know what happened to. And that's how we started Children of Scientology. And that's kind of what brought me into this whole community, is trying to understand what happened to other kids that mattered to me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, the treatment of kids is just part of, like, when people ask me, oh my God, what's the beef? What's your beef? I go, beef. I mean, I don't know. Do I have a beef with that? But you go, oh, why is Scientology such a destructive cult? I go, it's not because of Xenu. It's not because of the body thetans. It's not because of the millions of dollars you can donate. It's because of how they destroy families.
They destroy families.
100%.
And
intentionally destroy families. Intentionally. And so you were talking before about not having a home to go to. And I would say that if you were in the Sea Org, yes, that's true. If your whole family joined, then you had nowhere to go to. Your family was in, right? Your parents were in. You couldn't leave because where would I go? But they did the same thing to public kids. They would immediately begin to draw a line between your parents and your external family. So my extended family became antagonistic, open-minded, blah, 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 whatever they had to do to create a divide.
To take that away.
So we had no extended family. So even though we were public kids, our extended family had nothing to do with us. We had no contact with them. So we were so dependent on my mother, my aunt, my grandmother, my grandfather, who were all staff at the org, who were so committed and corrupted, basically. And so we didn't have anywhere to go. We had nowhere to go. So my mother said, you're joining the Sea Org? We had no choice. We had nowhere to go.
Mm.
We tried to resist. We were out ethics. We were counterintention. We were all these horrible things that you don't want to be in Scientology or as a child. So even for public kids, I'm just saying, you often have nowhere to go because they intentionally divide and conquer. As cults
You
do.
never had a chance. It was never really a choice. Aaron, I was thinking, I saw your Lex Friedman interview, which I thought was
So
really
good.
great.
Incredible.
So good. What really interested me is he asked you, so just on that beef, you know, you're having a beef, that kind of thing that you mentioned. He asked you if you were angry, and you sort of quickly ducked that and said, no, I'm not. I don't think I'm angry. And so the thing is, for me, is like, it's important to be angry. Like, angry is a really right. So I don't want you to feel bad if you are not. Look, I'm not going to speak for you on how you feel about things, but anger is really, really important. When I've gone through, you know, I experienced child sexual abuse by my father as a child. Okay. And the whole time growing up, Scientology told me, don't react, don't get angry, don't have human emotion reaction, and was obviously very controlling the whole way through. And I wasn't allowed to, you know, file a police report and stuff like that. Eventually, I go to counseling many years after I leave, and I file my police report, et cetera, et cetera. But filing a police report is not where it ends. I've had to pursue my case over many years. And where do you get the resource for that kind of energy? I had to tap into my anger. And if I never got angry, I never would have done anything about it. I never would have filed that police report. If I never got angry enough for myself, I never would have gone to counseling. If I never was angry enough, I never would have spoken out. So anger, that's why I want to communicate. Who tells us we can't be angry? Scientology. They say, oh, those bitter apostates, oh, they're so angry, they're so bad. No, anger is a good thing, and you can use it skillfully. You can tap into it. It's a great resource for energy, and you can achieve great things by the use of that emotion. So that's all I wanted to say.
I totally agree. And the truth is, it's funny because as I was answering Lex's question, you could tell that he was kind of like, well, you were very quick to say no, but I don't believe you. because then I followed it up with saying something like, I want to be David Miscavige's worst nightmare. And I feel like he was sitting over there going, that's anger. That's anger. That's anger. And it's funny because it's
he
just
had
in
this little cheeky smile on his face, didn't he?
I know. I wish he published the entire interview. It was so much. I don't know why he edits it all down, but it was so much better the whole conversation that we had. So and my answer to him is like, when I wake up on a day-to-day basis, I don't really resonate with that feel. Oh, I get angry about the stupidest, dumbest shit. But like, as far as why I do this channel, I don't feel like it comes from anger. But when you go,
right,
yeah, but why what make you feel so good to dunk on David Miscavige so hard? You're like, okay, it's rooted in the anger over how the families have been destroyed. And the fact that because for me, anger and grief are like pretty much the same thing.
In fact, I think that's a quote.
From what?
It's a quote, and I can't quote it. I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something like, I just found out what my grief really is. Its real name, or my anger's real name is grief. That's what they're saying. That anger is a service emotion to grief.
Yeah.
So Aaron, so on that, so yeah, you were saying that the anger and the grief is really closely tied together. Yeah, I can relate to that. I can relate to that. And anger is, yeah. Sorry, you go.
Well, there was a time I remember specifically in an interview with Daniel, the MA at Flag, and this is when they're really pressuring me to disconnect from my mom after I'd already said that I did, and then they caught me lying, and then I was gonna have to pretend to disconnect from her again. Where I tried to explain to them, I was like, look, you guys don't get it. I don't even give a shit if I do Scientology. Label me PTS type A. say I can never be on course or get auditing again. And if you ever get a KR on me saying anything bad about Scientology or David Miscavige to anybody, then declare me. But I'm not a threat to you. And as of right now, neither is my mom. And I said, I'm not a threat to you. I'm willing to leave you alone. I won't say anything bad to anybody. I won't do any Scientology. Label me PTS, but don't make me do this. At the time, I couldn't threaten to attack the church. So I wasn't like, or you're going to make an enemy out of me. I had to make my mom up like she was going to be some big bad enemy. Like, you don't need to start this war that doesn't exist right now. Like, you make me disconnect from my mom, you are going to have an enemy on your hands, and it just doesn't have to be this way. It's going to be better for her, better for me, better for you guys if we just let's do it this other way. And they were like, nah, we're good. We're going to do it our way. And so I take a lot of fucking pleasure in trying to be these guys' worst motherfucking nightmare.
Absolutely.
And that's not even a relative thing. We could all be Scientology's worst nightmare. And that's how I see it. It's one of the reasons I try to get so many people on YouTube is because what's better than one guy on YouTube, 100 people on YouTube doing the exact same thing. When people go, oh my God, what could I add? Everyone else is already doing anything. Do the exact same thing. Just be one other person doing it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And so it does come from that place of anger, but I don't feel like I approach it like, ooh, I'm angry today. I guess that's why I answered Lex's question the way that I did. I feel like I more approach it enthusiastically as a result.
I love it.
As a result of how much anger I have on how they have destroyed so many families, including mine and my wife's.
Totally. I feel like we have to be outraged by it all. We have to be outraged, and we need other people to be outraged by it. Anger.
We have to be right. We have to be outraged because who else is going to do it? And also, how do people hear the stories of what happened? They didn't, my mother said to me, I asked her, because she said she won't provide a police report, a statement. And then she, even though she had knowledge, and then she was trying to dissuade me from continuing with the police after I had filed my police report in 2012. By this stage, I'm talking to her, I think it's 2013. And I said to her, so she's trying to dissuade me. And I said, why do you not want me to continue with the police? And she said, because I don't want it to be made public. And at that point I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to make this public. So, I mean, obviously I didn't say that to her, but I actually immediately just completely cut my relationship with her, because I was like, I can't reconcile with the evil that you have agreed to is okay. This is vile and disgusting, and I will never have you near myself or my children because you are a dangerous person. So that's the thing, is we are trying to create safe environments for ourselves and for our children. And in order to feel safe, we have to speak out about these issues. In order for me to feel safe, I need to know that I have an active police case that's being pursued, so that my father doesn't just get to die peacefully in his sleep. And, after living a full life, he should be convicted for the harm that he has caused me, the harm that I'm continuing to live with every fucking day of my life. And so, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy, but there's a reason that we're doing it. We're doing it so that we can heal, and we're doing it so that we can survive in some way, because like you said, the anger is so close to the grief, and the grief is almost harder. The grief is so hard. It's the loss, it's everything that they took away from us. And so when I feel that grief, I feel helpless. And so I need to be doing something to make a difference. It's a difference for myself. It's a difference, yeah.
I feel like they perverted grief for us because it was low toned. And so you have this shame that you feel every single time you feel sad about something, you feel grief about something. It feels dirty. It feels being a victim is dirty. So we have to take that back. But I feel like what we've all come to understand is, if not us, then who? Like, yes, we are looking for justice and accountability for what we experienced. Once we finally understood that what was done to us was wrong and it shouldn't have been done. It should never have happened. But the fact that no one's doing anything to protect children or get justice for children is really, it's uncomfortable. But I think we've reached the point where we realize it's on us. It's on us to do something about it. It's on us to keep telling these stories, however many people have to tell it to corroborate it so that people take us seriously, so they understand that this was systemic and it was a pattern, it was repeating pattern, and it's not just a one-off, and it's not just Aaron or Miriam or me or whatever. Like, this is all per policy. This is by design what was done. Families were destroyed, children were gobbled up or spit out and harmed incredibly, and they're hiding behind religious veil, continuing to do it.
And continuing to do it. That's exactly right, Christy. And we get to see that in what you and Reese are revealing in this real time, kind of like, you know, inside the minds of what Scientologists say. And what's alarming is that they're putting their children through this. This has not ended. These children are being groomed to, you know, study that, you know, to be trained up, you know, and then they will be. Because the thing is that with Aaron Hubbard's technology, what it does is it brings about states of trauma. States of trauma disconnect a person from their body, which means that they lose their brain-body communication pathways. They override, and I mean, I could list a whole bunch of things, processes. We don't have that time. The processes, and on the training side, both sides do this. They perform this action so that over time, you actually are not able to self-regulate, and you are unable to recognize what is safe and unsafe in your environment. So I know for me, even after I left the Sea Org, I was still a Scientologist. And every time I tried to venture out into the outside world, a bit further from this, like, because I lived with Scientology people, I worked in their business, but the outside world, as soon as I stepped out, would feel chaotic because I didn't know how to maintain any boundaries. I'd go to a nightclub and someone would be hitting on me and I'd get scared and uncomfortable, and I felt out of control, and like yeah, so I didn't know how to maintain a safe environment for myself. And so this dysregulation of where you actually require something else for your own regulation, and that can be addiction, and that can also be the compulsive compliance with the wishes of others. And this is covered in Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score. He covers this really well. What I'm getting to is that these children that are on lines, that are doing courses, oh, it's just a course. It's just a course. No, it's not just a course, because what you're doing is you're changing their connection to themselves.
You're wiring,
so that
you're rewiring children. Yeah.
Thank you, Christy. That's exactly right. So you're rewiring them every time they're in that course room, every time they're in that auditing session. And that rewiring is gearing them only for the function within Scientology or in the Sea organization, with the reliance on the words of Aaron Hubbard. And that's why you still see, like, I've got friends that I grew up with, left the Sea Org many years ago. And even there's one friend who we used to have all these conversations, like great conversations about religion and this and that, and about Scientology. And there's a couple of those people that they've gone back into Scientology because they can't, you know, she struggled with addiction, with alcohol, and because they can't function without Scientology. And that's what you're turning these children into. So it's destructive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exactly what we see, like in the Facebook screenshots that Reese has shared when they're talking about, you know, the 7-year-old kid, like, oh, yeah. And then he's, you know, well, we got him on the communication course and whatever else. You're like.
You mentioned very early on in the beginning this projection onto Scientology kids that, they're reincarnated Scientologists or reincarnated Sea Org members.
Yes.
And, you know, you just imagine, like, if you had some 6-year-old kid that sees a Scientology course pack that's got this very colorful, you know, bold design. And if you were to walk over to it and pick it up because it looks interesting, they'd be like, oh, he remembers. Oh, he's drawn to it because he remembers. It's this when I was in Scientology, you could not have convinced me that Scientology was so crazy. Like, there's just this blindness to what's right in front of you. And it's funny because the ironic part is L. Ron Hubbard even talks about this, is like, if it's something is stuck to so close to your face, you can't see, you can only see it if it's near. If it's too close to you, you can't see it. And I think,
and Aaron, you were a child that was
I was
in
going to
those
say, but all of
at
us
a
were
young
those
age,
children,
as a child.
only
Yeah.
given
Right.
those tools, only given that data, only given those resources. So of course it was stuck to your face and you couldn't see anything.
Right.
else.
Yeah.
It's like bad. Our
So it
parents
would have
can't
been
say the
Post-it
same
note.
thing.
It should have been
Just
one
a
of those
bird.
Serge Delmar post-it notes that says GTS on it. That's what you want. Google that shit. But no, it was a blindfold and we couldn't see. And yeah. Sorry, Aaron, go on. Go on.
No, I mean, that was it. It's just, I think it's hard for people who haven't been involved in high control groups like this to understand that logic goes out the window. That's why you hear, you don't have to be stupid to get wrapped up in a group like this. Like there's an
Agreed.
element of how the control mechanism works that sort of bypasses normal logic pathways somehow. I know freaking rocket scientists who've gotten into Scientology. I don't,
Yes.
and believe it, like, and believe that Scientology is the only, not, I want to say,
Aaron,
yeah, go ahead.
Aaron, Rady DePauli's father, who was working at the Pasadena org, he used to work for the Jet Propulsion, what is it called?
Lab.
JPL?
Yeah, Jet Propulsion
JPL,
Lab.
the Jet Propulsion Lab. He was an engineer. So highly skilled. And when we went back, I think this was 2009 by this stage, we went to, I was like, oh, so we'll go and meet your father. Whatever. It's so awkward. He was up in the HGC. It was the Pasadena Ideal Org. I was gobsmacked. There was no, and this is before I even, like, I wasn't going online and going on the anti-Scientology. wasn't in that anti-Scientology world at all whatsoever. And I go to the Pasadena Ideal Org and we go up. There was 3 or 4 staff members and not one public in the entirety of this whole building. And the building was beautiful in this prominent spot in Pasadena, lots of passersby. And I just was like, and I was so gobsmacked because I'm like, hang on. And my partner at the time was an engineer. He's an engineer. And he was like, my partner Kieran was like, how is this, like, you know, they could relate a lot. My partner was involved in radiation and sort of, and just anyways, he was like, how is he just sitting in there and there's no one around and he's wasting his life and he's an engineer and he should be what? Like, yeah, it's so crazy. But
so her dad was he a staff member at this org? At the Pasadena He was one of the few staff.
Yeah,
Wow.
he was sitting in the HGC and there was not one person. Like, and he was like kind of annoyed and he just wanted us to go away. And I'm like, well, what else? You don't have anything else to do. What, like, this is crazy. Like, Kieran wanted to just chat to him about engineering stuff. And yeah, because he was so excited. I think it was Kieran's idea to go there. He was like, what? Your dad worked at JPL? Oh, we have to meet him. We have to go and meet him. I'm like, okay. So yeah, that was Rady's dad.
I feel like we were just talking to go.
Sorry.
No, we were just talking to Serge Delmar about how they pervert you one definition at a time. So they get you to agree to a different definition of a word and accept that and clear it and demo it and apply it and whatever. And then they do the next one and then they do the next one until you're so completely removed from reality at a certain point. And that's really I feel like that's what my mom's experience was. That's what they tried to do to me. And I just didn't buy into it, but that's what they did to the adults in my family, was basically alter reality one word at a time. And they all build on each other until their reality, and then they've let go of their critical thinking skills and given permission to and need to look everything through this lens of what would LRH do? What does LRH say? What's the policy? What's the reference? And can't think for themselves, period.
Well, guys, I'm going to have to jump here, actually. So I want to show everyone one more time. Children of Scientology is the YouTube channel. The podcast series is called The Lighthouse Project. And jump over there and subscribe. Do you guys have any sort of a schedule or cadence or pace that you try to stick to, or is it just as it comes right now?
We've been
one
doing
episode a week, generally.
One a week.
Yeah.
And we started with the Danny Masterson trial because we wanted to honor the Jane Does. And just FYI, it's been some tough stuff, and we've used explicit language because we decided to take back the words that we weren't able to use as kids or we didn't know as children. And so just there's a lot of trigger warnings. We wanted to honor the Jane Does and also our own experiences. But we're moving on to a cadet series, right, Marian?
Fuck yeah. I'm joking. I said that, Christy, because she said, just please use, like, let's go PG, don't use swear words. And I wanted to just throw one in there.
You're just, fuck yeah. We're starting with Catherine Spallino, the bad cadet.
Spallino, who is the bad cadet. She wrote a fantastic book, and she's someone that I grew up with and I've known for many, many years. And yeah, it's going to be a cool way to get involved and share her story.
That's and awesome. Our style is in the weeds, think tank, like we dissect everything and go into incredible detail. And so hopefully people enjoy that. We've been getting good comments. If people find us, like that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'll link.
And Aaron,
I'll
thank
link
you so
to the
much. You
channel.
inspired us to come to YouTube. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for your incredible support of so many people. It's incredible to see the second and third gen wave that showed up on YouTube. It's just remarkable. I never, ever, ever would have expected it. And I give you full credit. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It is David Miscavige's worst nightmare.
I love it. Aaron, thank you so much for having us on. It's been really great to chat with you.
My pleasure. Let's do it again. Thanks for hanging out with us this evening, everyone. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe